Hola, I'm Claudia Romo Edelman.
And I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum Milner.
And this is a podcast, A La Latina.
The playbook to succeed being your authentic self.
Today, the incredible Jessica Alba.
Jessica is a Latina of Mexican-American heritage, an accomplished actress, best-selling author, businesswoman, and advocate for underserved communities. Known for her diverse roles in comedies, dramas, and action films, Jessica has made a significant mark in both television and film.
In 2024, Jessica launched her production company, Lady Metal Mark Entertainment, focused on female-driven, culturally diverse, and Latino-inspired narratives.
In 2012, inspired by her health struggles and the birth of her first child, Jessica founded The Honest Company, a leader in clean and sustainably designed products.
Her leadership has earned her accolades, including being featured on Forbes' Self-Made Women cover and listed among Fortune's 10 most powerful women entrepreneurs. It's incredible to have Jessica with us, and I hope that you stay tuned with us. Cynthia, tell me more about Money Lion. What is your favorite product?
The product that I loved the most first was our credit builder loan. When I moved to the US, I realized that a good credit score impacts so many aspects of our life. If you have a high credit score, you can get lower interest rates on loans and credit cards, better insurance rates, and better chances of getting a loan. Can you imagine that more than half of our members raise their credit score by up to 27 points in 60 days?
Wow, okay, so I'm learning something new here, and I should be checking on my credit score myself.
Everybody should, and it's super easy. So for anyone out there needing to improve their credit score or even know your credit score, come to Money Lion.
That's amazing. How do you access the credit builder loan?
Two ways. Either go to moneylion.com/membership or download the Money Lion app.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm
Let's do
in.
it.
Today, an incredible guest, Jessica Alba.
Jessica, thank you so much for being here. We're super excited to talk to you about your journey as a Latina woman.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We want to start with getting to know your background. What made you be who you are and where you are today? Do you want to talk to us a little bit about your upbringing?
Sure. I was raised in a pretty traditional Mexican-American household. My father got into the military for about 8 years. And once he got out of the military, we moved in to one of my grandparents' house. My grandparents grew up in California, very poor, but my grandfather, of all of his siblings, really had the ambition and dared to try and even go to college. And he was, I believe, the only Mexican and only Latino in the Claremont Men's College is what it was. Now it's Claremont McKenna College. He graduated, and my grandmother worked and supported the family while she was also raising 5 kids while he was going to college. And he got his first job out of college was in corporate America as an accountant for a paper manufacturing company. And he remembers the guy who hired him saying, "Look, I'm from New York." And they had to do all of these, basically they tested all of these people that were applying for this job in different ways and gave them different tests on accounting. And he said, "I don't care about the color of your skin." He was like, "I'm sure a lot of guys wouldn't even consider your resume," but he was like, "I just want the best guy for the job, and you're clearly the best. But I need to know that you're gonna be confident enough to fill these shoes." And he's like, "Will you show up every day as a professional?" And he was like, "Because the people around here are not in favor of me hiring you." And my grandfather was like, "Yeah, I'm the best guy for the job and I won't disappoint you." And he basically worked there and worked his way up the ladder and became sort of the head of accounting, which is essentially the CFO at that paper manufacturing company, and was there my whole life. He worked a white-collar job, and it gave him the ability to really bring his family along. So he hired, I think, 2 or 3 cousins and trained them inside of that company, tried to give people shots always. And he bought 5 houses in total and always had family living in all of his different houses. And we got to live in one of the houses. And my grandparents spent time between 2 of their homes. And so I was raised really with my grandparents. in a lot of ways. So much more traditional than my parents. My parents were really young when they had me. My mother is, her family is from the East Coast, but they had all passed away when I was young. So I was really raised with my dad and my dad's family primarily. And there was a lot of singing, a lot of dancing, a lot of food, a lot of conversation about politics, a lot of conversation about, your place in life and dreams. My dad was really big on me not working for anyone and not depending on a man. He was really early in my life. He kind of drilled that into my head, which I think is interesting because every time I was sort of a defiant young daughter, he was like, listen to me. And I'm like, but you're also raising me to be completely independent. And I think that's always the sort of the balance of raising strong girls. And I can relate because I have two of them. But yeah, my dad was a feminist. He believed in me early on, and my mother is as well. But I think having a Mexican-American father who was encouraging me to follow my dreams, don't work for anyone, be independent, never rely on a man, it gave me, I believe, the sort of foundation and even the courage to dream early. And I started working at age 12 in entertainment. I helped contribute to my family's household income. My parents weren't as well off as my grandparents, and that's why we lived in one of their houses. And they worked several jobs each. They lived paycheck to paycheck. So it meant a lot when I was able to contribute to our family's household income, which I did, like I said, starting at age 12. And I kind of defied all odds. Really, in Hollywood, there weren't a lot of Latinas. There weren't a lot of Latinas that looked like me or sounded like me. I was always like, I'm the girl next door, but I'm also the girl that will kick your ass. And I can be both. I can be strong, I can be the superhero, and I can also be your bestie. And that was confusing, I think, for Hollywood because they didn't quite know how to pigeonhole me. So I did, when James Cameron chose me out of thousands of girls to be the lead of his first scripted thing that he did after the Titanic. It was a TV show called Dark Angel. And he really wrote the series around me and really empowered me. I was in the writer's room. I was there with him and the other creator helping shape the story and the character. And from there, I think Hollywood was like, she's an action girl. Then I was like, no, I'm going to do Honey, which is a dance movie, because I always loved Flashdance and Fame. And I always wanted to be a dancer, but we couldn't afford dance classes when I was younger, when I was little. And then I developed early, and then it was too late. And so I was like, my fantasy is that I was a dancer. So I got to sort of fulfill that and playing a character called Honey Daniels. And so I did sort of the opposite of what Hollywood expected of me. And I was also always wanted to be a superhero. And I was looking for jobs that had global scale. I never thought of a woman as being my competition. I more looked at men in the industry as my competition. And I felt like, the people who have the most power in Hollywood are the ones that can prove box office. And they can, in a crass or vulgar way of saying, they put asses in seats. And so I was like, I'm going to prove to Hollywood that I can put asses in seats. So I would do global beauty campaigns. I would always do global press tours, and I was pretty strategic about going after global Hollywood movies. So Dark Angel, then Honey, then Fantastic Four was the other big one. And in between that, I did Sin City with Robert Rodriguez, because I was like, when I met Robert, I was like, there are no Latinos in Hollywood, and you are like the only one. And he felt like a cousin. We felt like family right away. And I was like, I don't care what I have to do in any of your movies. I just want to work with you, because it just feels so good being seen and feeling like someone is, we're like cut from the same cloth. So I ended up doing a couple of movies with Robert, and he's become a very good friend. But that was me also being vulnerable and putting myself out there. And, I was like, oh, he's going to think I'm so cringy and I'm so embarrassed and I'm shy, but I have to tell him this. And it worked. So yeah, that's how I built my relationship with Robert.
So it sounds like your dad was a big influence, which I love to hear because we hear a lot about the strength of Latina moms in the household. I love hearing that it was both your dad and your mom, but your dad had such a big influence. But you didn't have anyone in Hollywood kind of like guiding you, like who?
No, the opposite.
Exactly. So how did you get mentors or guidance?
How did you become so strategic about knowing where I want to feel the seats?
I mean, I didn't know any of these things while I was doing it. I had a ton of self-doubt. I was like, no one looks like me.
And you
I'm
were so young. You started at 12.
At 12.
With the values that seem to be very Latino values, but also American values.
Yeah, and I think the thing that maybe gave me the most drive was like, nobody believes in me in Hollywood. No one thinks I can make it. If anything, the odds are stacked against me. I'm going to prove them wrong. And so I remember, I went on thousands of auditions, which are basically interviews for anyone who's in corporate America. It's the same thing. And I was like, at the very least, they're not going to forget me. And so I would do and say crazy stuff. And I remember I would have this like speech that I would say after auditions, like, I'm going to be the best person that you'll ever hire. You'll never find someone more professional. Like I was saying this at like 13. I was like, my speech was like, I'm this, I am this, I am that. You will not regret hiring me. And then sometimes it worked and they actually did hire me. Most of the time they didn't. But I needed to work because if I didn't, then my mom would have to get a job and go back to working, doing what she was going to do, and I wouldn't be able to act anymore. So because I helped supplement my family's household income, I needed to work. So that also gave me that sort of extra pressure, and I think it made me less precious about how I walked into rooms.
And just before we move out of Hollywood, you said, and it's still very lonely as a Latino in Hollywood. It's better. But did you have to somehow, did you have to play roles that were like stereotype or Latino roles or the other? Or how did you?
I definitely got offered a lot of stereotypical Latino roles or Latinas. And I got also turned away because they said I wasn't Latina enough. I got feedback on both ends. There was a lot of, what is it?
Implicit bias? Or?
No, like very, very sexual, very like vulgar. The way that I think they wanted to pigeonhole me just made me really uncomfortable, especially because like I grew up like Catholic. Like I was like, my grandparents are gonna see this. Like I can't see my boobs. Like my mom and dad are gonna see this. Like there's no way I can do a sex scene. Like what are we talking about? Like that's just not, I'm just more conservative in the way that I think about how I want to be portrayed and what makes me feel good and just having dignity. And that, it sort of went against a lot of the stigmas and stereotypes of the way that I think we can be pigeonholed as women, as Latinas.
Yeah, I think these stereotypes is one of the things we talk a lot about, that now we're becoming more visible, but the roles that we see Latinos playing, when do you see a CEO of a company in a movie being Latino? Or Latina, and that's what we want because that's what we are.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But you know what it takes? Producers, writers, executives that are comfortable with that, because very recently, I was with a group of producers that I worked with, and we were talking about developing this other project, and I was like, well, I just want this project to reflect the world that I know. And this female producer was like, well, we don't want to just make it diverse for diverse sake, like a check. And I was like, well, no, but because you are in your bubble, you don't see that diversity is the way that I'm seeing the world. There are Black and brown executives everywhere, but you just don't see them because you only see what you want to see. And you don't feel connected to our community, and so you don't see us. And that's okay. That's your blind spot. But I feel like I do have to work 3-4 times harder to try and convince people, or you just kind of sneak it in. Yeah. And you don't even need to make it a discussion.
Right. And I think that for our audience, it's so important to just like pay attention to a couple of the nuggets of wisdom that you just shared, which is, even though you have financial pressures and you feel that you need to do things, your values actually can take the decisions of your life. You don't have to do things. Latinos are so powerful. We're like in hockey stick form. Don't surrender. Like, go and do the things that feel right to you, that are according to your values.
Yeah.
And take example of, like people like Jessica that can be a role model about like, okay, so they're like...
I never wanted to go to sleep with that sick feeling in my stomach.
Right.
I never wanted to feel like I compromised like myself in any way. And it wasn't worth it to get ahead in that way. And so I didn't. And I didn't succumb to that pressure. And I think a lot of people feel like maybe there's no other way, but there is. And I think at the end of the day, you have to wake up and look at yourself in the mirror, no one else. And so you have to really protect yourself and protect your soul and protect your values, no matter how you move in your career. But you also can't limit yourself. And just because you don't see yourself in leadership roles doesn't mean you can't go in and fight for it.
Right, exactly.
I want to talk a little bit about financial stability, because you have been vocal about how being financially stable drove you. And I want to make the connection to our Latinas who are super entrepreneurial. We build businesses 6
1 in
times.
4, right?
I think 6 times faster than the average American. Unfortunately, these businesses are small. They tend to have 0 to 3 employees. We don't get venture funded.
No.
And then even when we are financially stable, we don't make use of the financial products that are available to every American, like investing in the stock market, improving your credit through building products.
It's because no one tells us about this.
Yeah.
No one talks to us about this.
How did you become more financially sophisticated?
I think because I grew up in a household that was in both extremes. My parents, their philosophy is very American, and my grandfather's philosophy was very first generation, where he was like, basically hide all the cash under the mattress kind of mentality. He was like, I'm just going to buy houses and that's where that's going to go, and we'll become part of a country club, and that's quality of life for me. And he had also like loved guitars, Spanish guitars, and that's kind of where he spent his money, and spent a lot of money supporting a lot of family members, to be honest. Yeah. And so I saw these 2 extremes, and I was like, you know what? I think the thing that for me was most important was living without stress. And so I would say first and foremost, I never wanted to live beyond my means. So not having debt was the most important thing for me, and never trying to be flashy to keep up with what other people think or my neighbors. I did not care. I never really cared about that stuff. So I would see, even coming up in Hollywood, all these actors, and they were so flashy, and they're flying private, and they have all the stuff, and they have all the things, and they have all this nice things. And as I was, climbing the ladder, I was like, every job I got would like, okay, now I can afford to refinish my floors in my house that I can't quite afford to furnish, because I never wanted debt, right? Yeah. And then my next job, I got to redo my bathroom and my kitchen. And then my next job, I got to, fix the roof, So every job, I was very mindful with how I wanted to. And I felt like when I was investing in real estate, it felt like just a good place for me to put my money. But I think a lot of us just don't have role models, and I wasn't really taught specifically, but I think the biggest thing for me was not living beyond my means, and I really didn't want to live in debt.
Yeah. So because I have young kids, I want to ask you about honest company, because I see all the things that are harmful, right, in the world with my kids. And I wish I had the energy, the vision of like, I'm going to start a company. Like, I feel like this is missing. I'm going to start it. You did it. You had it was your first kid?
Yeah.
And then you were like, I'm succeeding in Hollywood. I'm gonna now start a company. I don't know how to make a product. I'm gonna do it.
No, I had no idea.
Not only that, like knock down the incumbents that have been there for 100 years, like the competition and the challenge and the status quo. How was that?
I think I didn't quite know what I was doing until I was in the thick of it as far as like what it really meant or what it would really take to start a business. I mean, you're working nearly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for years and years and years and
with
years.
young kids and with a Hollywood career at the same time.
And I had young kids. I have to say my focus was not on Hollywood at all. And I was lucky enough that I had made a bit of a nest egg where we could be okay financially. My husband works. And so I was able to kind of take a step away from that. And I spent 3.5 years investing in this idea and really trying to hone in on it. And I got a lot of people, you know, slamming doors in my face, literally laughing me out of rooms. And I think there's a willfulness, I think, from Latinos that we have where it's like we have to believe in our dreams in a way that is wildly optimistic, or else we wouldn't get anywhere. Right? We just have to, or else we would be stuck in the same place. And so I tapped into that, and I spent 3.5 years just pushing and persevering and pushing and praying to God. And that's one thing I haven't spoken about. I have always had a very strong relationship with spirituality. It has looked different along the years and how it shows up. But I really have faith, and I believe that I'm here for a reason, and I think we all are here for a reason. And I do think that when you're here for good, the universe will show up and support you. It was not easy. I had everything get in the way, everything deter me. Every road was blocked, every hill was put in front of me, and I felt like avalanches of chaos along the way. But eventually it forced me to kind of find the little glimmers of light and to find the little paths that were a little bit easier. And finally, it got off the ground after 3.5 years. And then it just kind of built on itself. And the consumer was really the biggest reason. People were like, oh my God, I wish this company existed. Oh my gosh, I can have peace of mind. I don't have to worry about my health or my baby's health. Oh my goodness, this is awesome. And it was almost like a relief for people. And so I think it's a core thing in all human beings. We all just want to be like safe, and we want to be healthy, and we want to live our best life. And I think Honest fit right inside of tapping into that part of people.
And with the resilience that, you know, like, honestly, just like it takes so much to do a business to start with. And, you know, like, particularly if you're like not into that or have been working.
Oh, I didn't go to business school.
Exactly.
I have no background in business.
But you did partner,
I had to learn. Yeah, I partnered with 3 other guys. I brought them on as business partners. I pitched them the idea several times until they finally joined me. And yeah, I really tried to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, who have done this before, learn from them, and pivot. And, you know, you're just constantly learning and pivoting and learning and pivoting. I mean, business is very hard, or everyone would do it well. It's hard to do it well at every level, at every stage. And yeah, it's been the most probably satisfying and heartbreaking process that I've ever been through.
And you're doing it again, because it seems to me that you have a 3-act show so far. You were, you know, like, you're an incredible actress and rock Hollywood. Then you went into business and rock, you know, like, your industry and dismantle a lot of incumbents. And now you have another company, a media company. And as a Latina, I think that what we have learned from everyone that we have interviewed and what the data shows is how entrepreneurial we are. Also, how optimistic we are. We're 78% more optimistic than the rest of the population. So we believe it's possible. Si se puede, vamos adelante.
We have no choice.
But you know what? The point here is that we have to move that optimism to a possibilism, because it's possible. And seeing you make it, I think that should give our audience and all Latinas the sense of like, si se puede, let's keep going. You know, don't do it blind, but just like take moderated risks, because careers are long. It's possible because of who we are, Latinas particularly, because we're so resilient and resourceful, and we find a way, and we have the grandfather wisdom and your parent as a...
I would say from my grandmother, it's interesting when I channel her, it's like she MacGyvered everything. She optimized everything. Everything had 5 different uses. You know, if someone needed a haircut, if the car needed to be fixed, if the shoes were messed up, she'd like fix it. I'm like, Grandma, that's leather. Like, how did you fix leather? How does that work? She's like, it's fine. It's fine. She's like, it works, right? And I'm like, yeah, my shoe's fine now. And she's like, okay, go to school, you know? And so I think just watching a very competent, capable woman who was never gonna take no for an answer, figure it out consistently, that example is just ingrained in my soul. It's just like how I do things. It's how I operate in the world.
And that's how...
Also, the way I put my sunscreen on my kid's face, it's like, I get it all in there. And they're like, Mom!
But that's what we want Latinas to know. You know, like, we don't know how powerful we are. We haven't brought it to the awareness level, like, wow, we're resilient, we're resourceful, we're optimistic, possibilistic, we have career lungs, I can do it. So we just want to build that self-confidence of like, exactly, how does Latinidad becomes your superpower to take the decisions and the control of your life and be able to do the things you want to do, support the families that you want to support and do the...
And even if we don't have kids, there is something about that family spirit that we're all raised with, where we bring everyone along, like everyone that becomes... all of your friends become your chosen family, and you bring them along, and you believe in them the way that, like you're their mother. You believe that they're also capable of anything that they want, and the possibilities are there for them, and you don't even think twice. And I think that's something that I found about our community that's different that I've seen in other communities, where I've seen a lot of positioning where it's like, oh, there's only one seat at the table. For us, we're like, no, girl, come sit right here. I got a corner, you know, get your butt over here. Yeah. We have no problem doing that. And I think we need more of that. We need to show that there's space for all of us to be there. And the more that we can make room for one another and advocate for one another is the only way we're gonna break, I would say, these barriers and break these stereotypes.
There's no table. There's no seat at the table because there's no table. There's a country full of opportunities for every Latino if we support each other.
Yeah.
I want to talk about leadership and connect it to what you just said, because we've seen now Gen Z wants to be led by leaders that have characteristics like Latinas, right? They don't want to be led with a whip. They want to be led with care. They want to be led with a vision, but also they want to work with people.
Well, my grandma had a switch, so I don't know. Also a fly swatter.
But like, how you came from working, let's call you an individual contributor as an actor, right? And then you become a leader of a company. You're having to inspire. I might still be an individual contributor. Yes? It's fine. But what is your style? How did you get people, not just your partners, but a team? How did you build teams? How you identified who you wanted to bring on board?
Yeah. I think I always see the best in people, and I see what they're capable of. And so while I don't shy away from the tough love or the honest conversations, I also don't shy away from the encouragement and the I believe in you, and you know you're better than this, and step up, because this is who you really want to be. You don't need to continue to behave in ways that feel compromised.
So you're leading like a mother. You're treating them.
It's a bit like tough love, yeah. And I think that I have had, you know, you go through moments where you're like, maybe I was a little too tough, or maybe I need to do more team building and gathering, or maybe I need more of that one-on-one time with people. And so it just kind of, it changes depending on what your employees need and what the vibe is. If you have great lieutenants, then it makes it a lot easier, where you can just be the cheerleader for people. But if you don't have great lieutenants, you have to do a lot more micromanaging.
And is there anything, you spoke about roles and maybe roles in Hollywood and in business that you didn't want to play. a stereotype of being Latina, but are there characteristics of being Latina in yourself that you think these are characteristics that made me succeed besides what you already spoke about, like the resilience, I can do it even if nobody believes in me? Anything else that you think we should tell Latinas, like lean on this, this is good?
I think passion is good. I think we don't need to be stoic and we don't need to hide our feelings. I think passion, as long as it's authentic, invigorates people. Yeah. And I think it gets people excited about a vision and what's possible. And I think for a long time we were told, especially I looked into a little bit of the history of the conquistador way of the stoic kind of like bottle your feelings. And these Latinos are so wild and passionate and completely, unhinged, and how it's such a threat because they're harder to control. If people actually have feelings and they're able to express and tap into their feelings, they're not as moldable. You can't just say, do this and do that and shut down your feelings. They're like, no, but this doesn't feel right. Yeah. And you need to help me feel better about this in order for me to get on board. And so there was a reason why that stereotype in particular has been demonized in American culture and society, is because it's harder to control. Yes. And so I think we need to lean into our feelings and we need to connect more with what does actually resonate with us and feels right. And also we could be wrong about it. We could think that, this feels really oppressive or this feels really wrong and I don't understand this. Instead of letting that build up, like talk about it right away. And maybe your leader or your boss or the circumstance will reveal itself to be something completely different. And then you can take a deep breath and then you can keep it moving. But as long as there's don't have feelings and hold in your feelings until they explode, we're not gonna get anywhere.
And what you just said, it's so common that we are seeing how Latino values are in need to flip the script, to be flipped, because being passionate, honestly, in a corporate setting means being committed and enthusiastic. Who doesn't want people that are committed and are going to wear the T-shirt, ponerse la camiseta, and go and work with enthusiasm that you want to put this person that is passionate or is negative into being the evangelist of, artificial intelligence or new changes that you need. So it's all about understanding how the things that might be seen right now through stereotypes are actually positive in corporate settings and for America, like passion. Yeah. And accent. And, things that people are thinking that if we have an accent, we're less competent. No, having an accent is you speak two languages.
You're actually a little bit ahead of the game.
Exactly.
Sorry, it's the opposite.
We hear a lot that when people have to hide themselves, the energy that they could be spent working and driving value, it's literally spent trying to fit in. So you can be in a meeting and instead of I'm going to say something that brings the conversation forward and it's good for the business, you're like, okay, how do I say something that makes me sound smart, that makes me sound like I'm not too passionate? Like you're just literally in your brain, you're not in the meeting, you're trying to fit in. So we should do a study to quantify how much money companies lose with people in an office wasting their time trying to fit in.
Second-guessing themselves.
Exactly.
And trying to fit in. I think that happens across the board for sure. I think it's a little bit more, I'm going to make a stereotype. I feel like women are guilty of that a little bit more because we criticize ourselves and we feel like we need to have all of the answers. And we feel like, we need to have our A game plus all the time. And men, unfortunately, especially white men, can be kind of mediocre, and their confidence is level 10, where we're pretty outstanding, and our confidence is level 4.
Right.
And I think we also need to, come to terms with that.
Yeah.
And be comfortable with, you may not have all the answers, but you can ask questions, and don't always assume the worst. I think that's something that maybe in the passion, if you can walk into your passion with best intentions, then it doesn't feel like such a threat to your team when you do ask questions or when you do bring up things.
Yeah. I have a two-pronged question that is related to your third, if you want, to your company.
Third act.
Your third act, if you want to call it that way.
I don't know if this is I might have some hyphen in here with the third act, but this is so far my focus of the third act.
Right.
Just because media is so influential of culture.
Right. And so I want to ask about that, what made you go into this place? And also, I have noticed, like all the millions of people that follow you are watching, and I've seen how you have increased your volume for Latinidad, for being Latina. And I admire that. I applaud that. I cheer you up for that because you're such an example for so many millions of Latinos and Latinas like my daughter that feels permission to be Latina now, contrary to before. So have that increased? Have you somehow opened the window for being more Latina? And how is that connected to maybe the new company that you have, media company?
I don't know. I think journalists weren't interested in it before, and I didn't get specific questions about it. To be honest with you, with journalists that would interview me for roles, and there has been a lot more interest in it, I think, since a lot of the data has come out about Latinos. And there's just a lot more of an emphasis to even ask me questions about it. But I've been proudly talking about it. I mean, in the media for a long time. I mean, even my first pregnancy, I was on the cover of Latina magazine, and that was 17 years ago, because my daughter's over 16. Oh my God. I think it's just whether people, but social media wasn't as prevalent, right, as it is now. So now that I have this platform, I can talk about whatever I want. Before, I was restricted to the way that Hollywood and media wanted to talk about me. And it was really the journalists deciding how they wanted to paint me. And I would say that is the one thing I've been very grateful for, is the emergence of social media has allowed me to be able to speak freely my truth. And that's probably what you've seen lately is oh, she doesn't have to go through a media company and a journalist deciding how they want to paint her. She gets to talk about herself directly with the audience as she wishes. And so that's probably what you've seen.
But I also see some intentionality about making sure that you're elevating and lifting and inspiring.
But I'm always doing that. Yeah, I've always done that. I mean, you can talk to people for years and years and years. I've supported entrepreneurs. I've supported Latinas. I give them time. I give them tips. I spend hours and hours with women who are trying to get ahead or do business in corporate America, in Hollywood, actresses. I make time for people and always have. And I think a lot of that comes from no one ever making time for me and feeling so isolated and alone. I think I try to be the example that I never had. And so I make an effort to do that for people.
And we're grateful for that.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So what areas are you interested in? Since you were such a visionary with Honest Company, can you tell us what areas you are envisioning as growing sectors in the business world?
I would say I'm really interested in women's sports. I'm really interested in women's healthcare. And as much as we feel and see the rise of Latino representation in media, it's still in its nascent stages. We're still less than 5% of leads in American movies, television shows, in media, in front of the camera. We're still, I believe, that same percentage, even less behind the camera. And so we have a long way to go in media, which, like I said earlier, it really is how culture sees themselves. It really moves culture. And so those three spaces, women's sports, healthcare, and media, are the three sectors that I spend most of my time thinking about, and I'm in meetings about, and just trying to figure out, how I can bring value to those spaces.
And you have a new media company that one of the focuses is in the Latino community as well.
Yeah, I would say I can't help but tell stories through my own lived experience. And so that will always be a cornerstone and a passion of mine and an area of focus for me. Also women's stories, also any underrepresented people. I feel it probably differently than the way other people feel it because I feel connected to those communities in a real way. It's my family, right? It's who raised me. Yeah. And so until we can have more true equality and representation, we have a lot more work to do. So I'm excited because it's green pastures for me, and there's a ton of white space.
Right. And so I think that in closing, just the entire community is growing hockey stick form, right? Wherever you see it, purchasing power, economic power, population, youth.
By the way, we always have, just no one was taking I think no one was taking any data on us for a long time.
Exactly.
I think they're finally collecting data on us.
And it's exploding. And now we just have to put it as a coherent narrative to create campaigns that makes everybody knows. Yeah. But so the data is growing. Our representation on screen, behind the screen, that is not growing as much.
No.
And therefore our perception is still stuck on stereotypes.
Yep.
So I think that when I see the data, right? I see that community growing. Our
growing
unity,
middle class, 1 in 4 children born in this country are Latinos, yep.
Every piece of data is like, shoom, we're going up. What is also growing, which is amazingly optimistic for me, is the unity among Latinos. We're not elbowing each other as much, we're supporting each other much.
Right.
Our pride, because we know the data much more, is growing. So with this moment in time, which is incredibly important, this could be a window to make history for our community and never have a generation that is not fully paid, not fully seen, and not fully valued. What is your message to young generations? What would you tell Latinas, young Latinas, in this moment of time, knowing what you know, having the platform that you have, so that we can literally just like cross the finishing line and get the job done?
What's the magic? I think we just have to be relentless with our drive. We have to be relentless with our dreams, with our perseverance, continue to create businesses, continue to be curious, continue to be optimistic, continue to believe in yourself.
Right.
So let's imagine that you go back to your 30-year-old self.
Okay.
What advice would you give her that you wish somebody had given you?
Or to your younger self. Yeah.
To your younger
because
self.
You're like 30.
When I was, thanks.
She's like, I'm 32.
What are you talking about?
You mean 2 years ago?
2 years ago, what would I have said to myself? When I was 30, I had just started Honest. I had a 4-month-old and a 3.5-year-old. And I was starting my journey as an entrepreneur with a lot of excitement, but a lot of self-worth issues. I would say that I need to trust my instincts. I need to not feel like I need validation from any of the men that I have. Let me remind you that you hired. You hired all of them. And I felt inferior to them for a long time. And it took me about 3.5 years to figure out that I was the one that was in charge. And it was a painful journey getting there. And I needed to learn it that way, I suppose. But I wish I could go back in a dream or something to my 30-year-old self and just be like, nah, girl, you don't need to listen to them. It's fine. Just trust your gut. And like, take it in, be nice, listen to what they have to say, give them space for their feelings as well, but trust your gut.
Incredible.
Great. I love this. This advice is great. Is there anyone else that you think we should have here in the podcast?
Definitely Carla Vernon. She's fantastic. She's been in corporate America for a very long time, so she's been through it as an Afro-Latina. And so she comes to the table with a lot of lived experience in corporate America.
I love this. So I really hope that we can meet maybe in 4 years here, and that we can look at numbers. Maybe we're going to be 25% of the population, not 20% like we are almost, 19%. And we can say we're not less than 1% in politics or less than 1% in the C-suite, less than 2%, but we're able to actually see numbers
and
rise.
We're getting VC funding for our businesses.
We're getting VC funding for our businesses.
Yeah.
So
and we're represented in Hollywood a little bit more. Let's move the needle in culture and community and all of it. Yeah, because we're there, right? We're just not represented in the right way. in the way that we deserve to be with dignity.
Yeah, but I mean, we didn't talk a lot about this, but you say that the reason why you can bring content that is relevant to our community is because you have lived experiences. Unfortunately, if we wait for the decision makers to have the lived experiences so the content follows, it's going to be 200 years. So we need, to bring to the decision-making position more Latinos, but also get non-Latinos to understand us and to put money behind it.
I think they just have to be comfortable with us telling our stories in an authentic way. They don't have to be us. Yeah. All they have to do is be allies.
Yeah,
exactly.
And the business case is there. Like we're seeing it in banking. We're seeing it like big businesses understand that either they invest in our community
retail.
Yes.
All
so we need Hollywood to follow.
Yeah. And again, we're going to have a community where empowered Latinas can empower Latinas. And that is so much thanks to role models like you. We're so grateful for having you here today.
Thank you.
Jessica Alba, thank you so very much.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for saying yes to this and for sharing your story with our audience.
And with your wisdom and your story, we're going to be able to lead and succeed a La Latina.